Good Friday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast with Jesse Simonton, Austin Price, and Rob Lewis. I'm Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along with us as we get you ready for Tennessee and Florida. The Gators remain heavy favorites in this game. Obviously, a lot of challenges for Tennessee in this matchup. Let's start first defensively. And the million-dollar question Jeremy Pruitt's trying not to answer or address right now is, Brice Thompson going to play? Is he not going to play? If he plays, Austin, how much better does that make Tennessee?
I think it makes them a lot better in the back end. And I'm sure there's going to be some rust, and I would expect Florida to at least, try to throw him on early, just see if he's up to the challenge. But, on the whole, it does give Tennessee a lot more experience at corner. And, right or wrong, Alante's a good player, but right now Alante's, I think, down on himself a little bit. Now you have a corner out there in Brice who's really, really confident. Coming off last year, and just I think a confident kid on the whole. So I think it helps the corner spot a lot.
You think he's going to play?
I do. He's practiced in full all week long. Practiced with the ones. We were out there on Wednesday. We got to see that then. But even from the other people I've talked to, and I quote, "I've not been told one way or the other, but he's practicing as if he's going to play."
Jesse?
Well, Jeremy's been coy with Brice Thompson, and Dan Mullen's been, just as.
That's what coaches do.
Yeah, he hadn't said anything about Henderson's availability or Zuniga's ankle, and so I think both coaches seem to be doing what college coaches do, which is they allow you to just kind of everything is veiled in secrecy, and then we'll come see it on Saturday. If Brice Thompson's on the plane, he's playing.
Right.
Sure. With the way the travel rosters work. You're not going to take a kid down there that's not going to play. So if he gets on the plane on Friday, we'll know that answer. Friday afternoon, Friday, perhaps Saturday morning. But I'm with AP. The way this week has kind of progressed, it certainly seems like he's playing. Now, is the holdup the university with the the court date not coming until after the Florida game during the bye week? I don't know, but again, preparation-wise, it certainly seems like 20 is going to be out there.
You're not preparing and running stuff. Even I wouldn't even buy the whole grassy knoll theory. Well, he did it when the media was out there. He's been running with the ones when we weren't there. You're not going through all that if he ain't playing. You'll never convince me otherwise.
Especially when you're talking about you just started Kenneth George and Warren Burrell at corner.
They need all the reps they can get.
Exactly. They need all the work that they can get. So I think it almost looks kind of obvious.
I thought early in the week, Brent, that your notion of somebody on the university side potentially being a roadblock would be very feasible. But as the week has went on and he's practiced with the ones and not just been out there, just kind of doing some stuff off this to the side, to me, it's just pretty glaring that he's going to play.
Pruitt was asked Wednesday on the SEC teleconference specifically if they had to wait until after the court date, if that was the reason he didn't play last week, and he completely sidestepped the question and played coy again, and that's kind of the way it is until we get to game day and see what happens there. Brice Thompson, no Brice Thompson. That's not Tennessee's biggest issue in this matchup when you look at Tennessee defensively. I think the question is, what can they do from a defensive front standpoint? I know the Florida offensive line's not very good. How do you attack, Rob, Florida's offensive front? How does Tennessee's defensive front seven find success on Saturday?
I think you see him play like Jeremy did against BYU, and you didn't need to against Chattanooga, but I think you see Jeremy, kind of dial it up. If you're playing some of the young guys, I completely agree with Coach Pruitt's point to be aggressive. If you're going to make mistakes, make them moving forward instead of sitting back on your heels and wondering wondering about this read or that read.
I would make
run blitz it.
Totally,
just be totally aggressive.
Yeah, and if the inexperienced quarterback beats you, he beats you.
Florida's not been great on the offensive line. They ran for 200 yards against Kentucky, but that was really skewed by that last play. What was that, a 70-yard touchdown run? Before then they had, they were okay, but it wasn't like they were just gashing them. And Miami just stonewalled them. And I don't think Miami's very good. So, I don't think Florida's run game is what I thought it was going to be.
Well, the interesting thing about Florida, too, is Piron's pretty good, but it's been all him. They're not Pearson really in the game. Malik Davis, who was kind of their little speed type back the last year or two. I think last I checked, he had, less than like 10 carries this season or
Right.
something. So, it's pretty much, unless Perine's back there, they're not going to run the ball. And you're going to see them do some 5 wides. They're going to run lots of bubbles. The thing is that some of their running game is going to come from the receivers. It's going to come from Hammond, and it's going to come from
Jet sweeps,
Tyree
little flip
Cleveland.
outs.
Yeah, and that's how they kind of open up. And then that seam down the middle to Kroll, the tight end, and Van Jefferson.
Yeah, I don't say Tennessee matches up evenly with Florida in terms of Tennessee's defensive front against the Florida offensive line, but I don't think it's this huge disparity, even because I don't think either side of the line of scrimmage is particularly good for the teams there. Daniel Petulli going to play, going to be back. I think we talked about it on Monday, as you've seen it happen throughout the course of the week with Tennessee playing aggressive, with concerns about the defensive front. How big of a deal is this? How big of a deal is it that Daniel Petulli is going to have a chance to play an extended run for Tennessee?
Well, we expected him before the season. If you were looking at each line, each part of the defense, we're talking about hypothetically Tennessee could be getting back their best cornerback and best linebacker.
Their best guy in the back parts of their defense. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if we're talking about D-line, linebacker, corner, or secondary, they're getting 2 of those 3. And they don't really have a best guy on defensive line.
Well, Emmett Gooden's walking around,
Right.
After surgery, and he's not coming back
Yeah,
this year.
so I think it is a big deal. Petulli wasn't great on Saturday, but part of that was just kind of knocking off the rust a little bit. It was good for him to get out there and get 10 snaps. I asked him earlier this week, where are you health-wise in terms of, do you feel like you can go out there and play a full game? And, he said obviously his playing time's up to be determined by the coaches, but if it was his choice now, he feels good enough that he can go out there and run. And I think if that is the case, if the staff feels comfortable about his lateral mobility, and Tennessee, I will say, is probably catching a break that Tony's out. He was breaking ankles a year ago in this game and gave the ball some fits. The fact that they're not going to have to worry about him both in the run game and as a returner receiver is helpful. But I think Petulli's big. I think you're going to see him and Toa play the lion's share of reps at linebacker.
Yeah, you have to if you're Tennessee. They're clearly their best too. To flip it over to the other side of the ball, biggest concern has to be your offensive front.
No question.
How does Jim Chaney combat the inexperience on the offensive front against a defense that's multiple, with a defensive coordinator that, to borrow Philip Fulmer's O-line, men is in a bucket. They'll come from anywhere. How do you combat that if you're Jim Chaney? Because to me, that's the biggest part of this matchup. I know we talked about it a little bit on the roundtable yesterday, but to me, that's the biggest intrigue: is what is your answer to Florida's defensive aggressiveness when you're playing with a young offensive line that may have trouble figuring out who's coming from where?
Get the ball out early, and then I think roll the pocket some. I actually think JG's not too bad. The throw he made to and it's not a roll. It wasn't a rollout, but it was still him on the move. The throw that he made to Palmer last week, I thought was one of his better throws.
I thought it was his best throw.
I would work the sidelines, get the ball out quick, and then I just think anytime you can get all that speed flowing one way and hit them something backside, might work too.
I just think keep it as simple. Give those. You're starting two true freshmen and Calvert, who's never played, started an SEC game. Just keep it simple. Try not to make those kids think too much.
Well, Brent said on the roundtable on Wednesday or Thursday that the early downs, first down was key, not playing behind the sticks. And I agree with that. If Tennessee can't, play at 2nd and 6 and they're sitting there at 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10 or plus, it's going to be a long day. Because I think just anytime you're having to sit there and, throw a lot on 2nd and 3rd down, until JG proves he's out of the funk, I just think that's a rough.
And what's funny is that Florida's defense actually hadn't been that good defending 3rd downs this year. Miami converted some big ones. Kentucky with the Mod Wagner just basically being like the jump ball, dynamo out there. I do think in terms of individual matchups, if I'm Jim Chaney, I'm scheming as many ways as possible to get Marquez Callaway on Marco Wilson. If I'm looking at where can we win, Tennessee's going to have some problems, like Rob said, with some young guys up front trying to block, the Louisville transfer and Zuniga and even Miller. But But Wilson just is not the same guy as he was 2 years ago since coming back from his ACL surgery. I'll have this in the 10 things. But when he was a freshman, he allowed less than 40% of the balls were completed against him. This year, it's like 95. I mean, it's almost every single target his way has been a completion, or he's also had like 3 penalties.
Right,
and
he's
so
had 3 PIs.
And so, a good way I think for Tennessee to maybe even get some cheat yardage, a la the Mark Sanchez offense from the Jets, when they went to the AFC. Sometimes you're just going to have to let your guy go up and just try to get it. And we saw in the Auburn game that worked. And I do not think it's a recipe for success every week, but it could be a way to kind of keep yourself in the game if you run it, and then find a way to take some shots to Callaway.
Everybody, a lot of fans watching are going to be saying screen pass, draw play. Is that realistic against Florida's speed?
I think the draws, Georgia has had success again with that the last couple of years. The screen game is just not something that Chaney has done a whole lot, so that would be going against tendencies, which perhaps he does bust that out this week. We haven't seen it a lot at Tennessee through 3 games, and that's not something, in watching Georgia that they did a whole lot either, which is surprising because of all their tailback talent. And he did throw it to them a lot, and I do think that you're going to see Gray and Chandler and these guys involved in the passing game, whether that's screens or AP's favorite wheel routes or just, quick swing passes.
Yeah, I think you've got to, again, out of the hand as fast as you can. Get it out of Jared's hand as quick as you can.
Is that your keys to the game?
That's got to be one of his
I know, but
keys.
it rhymed. You know what I'm saying?
You've got to get it out. I just think he has to get the ball. He can't hold the football. Can't pat if he's patting the football, it's not going to end very well.
I think one thing that worries you is that has not been a strength.
Right. No question.
Throughout his career.
He is. You go back to last year. Tennessee wasn't ready for this game mentally. They thought they were a year ago. They weren't. They couldn't figure out where the blitzer was coming from, and it snowballed on them and got out of control in a hurry.
And they need to take care of the football. Part of the thing is, Florida won that Kentucky game because they got some cheap turnovers late, and Tennessee just can't. It's about protecting the football as much as it is taking it away.
To me, Tennessee can't turn it over more than once. I think if they turned it over multiple times, unless Florida is equally as giving.
Yeah, you got to win. You got to win the turnover margin. Look, and that's the case anytime you're a double-digit underdog, Rob. You're talking. I don't care who you are. If you're a double-digit underdog, you're going to look at the keys every time, and one of the keys you're going to say is you can't turn the football over. You can't beat yourself.
I think Tennessee's got to get some turnovers on the Gators' end of the field, and I think they've got to hit some big plays because I just don't see them putting together many
Tennessee
11, 12 plays.
Turnover margin than Florida.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't see. It's hard to see Tennessee lining up and going 11 plays, 7 minutes off the clock, 80 yards, driving the football all the way down the field against them.
And then bend but don't break. If you can have, let's say, 3 drives where Florida moves it on you, but then you force them to kick field goals. That goes a long way.
Well,
and on the flip side, Tennessee's not been great in the red zone. If they get in there, they got to cash it.
Well, and that's why I actually think Mullen. He did it in the Miami game, and he did it against Kentucky. He'll go for 4th down a lot. Sometimes Tennessee's defense is going to have to buck up and get 4 stops, not 3. And conversely, I think this is a game that Jeremy may have to be a little more aggressive than he typically would be going for it, maybe, to grab an extra couple minutes if you can convert a first.
Well, he's been aggressive. They just haven't been any good at it.
I agree.
What are they, 1 for 6 or something like that?
But
1 for 8?
He's going to have to kind of make that math and that calculus in his head versus is it worth a 48-yard field goal from Samaglia versus what happens if we convert this 4th and 2?
Yeah.
And those are the head coach decisions. That's why he's getting paid $4 million.
Well, you go back to the 09 game when Kiffin went down there, and as I wrote in my column on Thursday, they forced Florida to kick some field goals, and they just hung around. They hung around for 60 minutes, and that's what Tennessee is trying to do. I think the other part of this, Rob, you wrote about on Wednesday in this matchup that's intriguing. The unknown is not just the youth on the offensive line, but you're playing a lot of youth in a lot of places on the road for the first time. So how does a Henry T react? Even a Theo Jackson, who's been in the program but hadn't played significant snaps.
How about your quarterback? He didn't play there last time.
Right. How does he react? How does Jared react?
Warren Burrell.
He did play there last time. He checked to that throw.
He didn't.
Down at the goal line.
Yeah, but that was the Quentin Dormandy game. He didn't start. Yeah.
Yeah, but he played in the game. He was on the field.
Roman Harrison played what 30+ snaps last week with Varus Crouch. I mean, clearly Jeremy is force feeding those guys playing time, and I don't know that I've noticed Crouch with a big bust, but there's been a couple of times where Harrison has looked unclear exactly where he was supposed to be before the snap.
To me, it worked. I mean, you could argue both sides that the inexperience it really cripples you in a game like this, but then the fact that there's no scars for some of these kids, they don't know the history of the last two meetings.
They weren't on the field for a Hail Mary last time they were down there,
or
on the bench,
or the 4th and 13 or whatever it was. I mean, yeah. I mean, you could argue that helps that they just go out there and play. I mean, you won't know till Saturday.
And Florida's got youth too. They're banged up. They're playing youth, and their quarterback hadn't started a game since he was a 9th grader.
I said it 2 weeks ago when the game time was set. Noon's a blessing for the Vols,
So
because that
just
place
like-
would only be amped up more at 3:30, and then even worse at 7.
Yeah, like Auburn last year. I mean, I think that
helped
played in
Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
I mean, I really think it takes some energy out of the home crowd.
Well, I agree with you. I agree with both you guys on that. I think the other thing too is the youth question, the youth debate is, I don't want to say is irrelevant, but they're your best football players.
Yep.
You got to go play them. I mean, they're either going to be able to handle it or they can't. It's not like you're sitting here deciding, do I play this guy who's a little more talented as a young player, or do I go with this great experienced veteran? I mean, DeAndre Johnson, no offense to him, he hasn't played down there either.
Right.
So Crouch versus DeAndre Johnson, okay, you play your more talented guy because neither one of those guys are experienced.
No, I'm totally.
Theo Jackson versus Trayvon Flowers, or you know what I'm saying? I mean, they're just not. This is who you are, and it's who you're going to be, and you're going to have to play
Or
through it.
K-Ron Calvert versus Marcus Tatum.
Yeah, you just got to play.
I mean,
through
I'm
it.
totally on board with what it looks like Jeremy's doing. Play those young kids. I mean, it's not like, man, I don't think you're going to go down there and beat Florida with. I mean, being to be harsh on these kids, but DeAndre Johnson, Kevon Bennett, Ryan Johnson, I mean, those kids aren't suddenly going to morph into all SEC players. I mean, play your more talented guys and hope they make some plays.
All right, let's talk about Kyle Trask. What's Tennessee getting into there? I mean, we got a small sample size from the Kentucky game. Clearly, I agree 100% with Coach Pruitt.
The
Florida
offense
did
is more
not
efficient.
change. It did not change what they were doing.
Right.
They were aggressive with it. Now, how would they have reacted with Trask if Kentucky had punted the ball and backed them up? I don't know, but because Kentucky gave the ball nearly at midfield, it let them open up the offense and get rolling right out of the gate on that drive. But there's no question Mullen did not change his offense. So going into this game before Franks got hurt, you had good Felipe, bad Felipe. And bad Felipe could be really bad. Good could be a 70-yard throw it over your head because the guy's got a cannon deal. What are they getting with this guy? Does anybody know?
I mean, I was there when I was still at Florida that spring. It was right before I had come to moved to Tennessee that summer that Kyle arrived on campus, and he was kind of the interesting piece of that class because he was a last-minute deal by Nuss, and obviously people have written about it. King, who's the dynamic quarterback at Houston, was the starter at Manville that Trask backed up all 4 years of high school, never transferred, hasn't transferred from Florida, which is interesting. He's a big, athletic, mobile kid who had a lot of arm talent, but I think there was, at least when he first arrived, there was some kind of JT Shrout where, when more people you put on the field, the more problematic kind of things become. But in terms of just raw arm, he looked better than Appleby and all those guys that were on the team at that time. So it doesn't surprise me to see him go into Kentucky and make some plays. I do think that Jeremy's going to try to bait him a couple times because Stoops almost did get him twice on Saturday night. He did almost throw the game away with that 2-point conversion play that if the Kentucky guy didn't drop it, he was going to run it 99 yards back for 2 points the other way. He did almost fumble. So I do think that, while there's good Felipe, bad Felipe, everyone's really excited about Trask. He averaged less yards per attempt than Felipe has all season. His completion percentage was about the same. I just think the offense seemed to kind of get some spirit that say, hey, we don't want to lose this game.
Well, and I mean, to me, Trask is a more powerful runner.
He is.
He's
And I think
harder
you're
to
gonna-
bring down that way, and
and
I think he's more willing to run.
And it sounds like they're going to get some Emory Jones.
I think you're going to see. That's what I was going to say. I think you're going to see Paul's favorite son out there, running, making some
Fortenberry
plays.
shout out.
I mean, he did teach Paul how to throw.
He did. Sadly, Paul, he didn't throw it that much better than Paul does.
Do you go in if you're Dan Mullen? Do you say, hey, third series we're going to get Emory Jones in, or is this one of these deals? It's fun to talk about, make Tennessee prepare for a bunch of stuff, and then you're playing Emory Jones if things bog down.
I
with Trask.
envisioned, what was it, 06 when they had when
Tebow
was a
and
freshman?
That was
in
kind
league?
of the comparison that who Pat Dooley used on the Nation on Sunday night.
That's kind of what I think. I mean, how many 3rd and 2s, 4th and 1s did Tebow pick up that night here?
Well, Tennessee in his career, Tennessee never stopped him on 3rd and short. 3rd and 2 or less, they never got.
That's kind of what I envisioned.
Which would be funny if they took out Trask.
Because Trask is a more powerful runner.
Trask
to me
is like
than,
240 and Emory Jones like 220.
Right. I mean I don't understand
I
the
almost
idea
think you know what they did. They brought in Emory Jones and they tried to do a trick play against Georgia a year ago. I wonder if they do something like that, where the defense is ready for a run, and instead he drops back and throws a flea flicker or a deep pass. I think the lion's share of reps are probably going to go to number 11.
unless he's just not playing well. I can't imagine.
Yes.
Here's a young guy getting his first start. If he's getting into some kind of groove, I can't imagine. If he's managing the game and he hadn't had a bunch of bust, why are you messing with him mentally by going, hey, 3rd series, we had planned to get it. I know coaches are crazy this way. We planned to get Jones in, so let's play him because we said we were going to play him. That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense.
Which is why you really got to applaud, this staff. I'm sure they really wanted to play those young quarterbacks against Georgia State, but they held off.
I'll let that one go, Austin. When you look at this game overall, I don't remember years, Rob, in this matchup where the two guys who probably are licking their chops the most are the defensive coordinators. You got Todd Grantham, who's looking at young offensive linemen and a quarterback who struggled, who wants to be super aggressive. And then if you're Tennessee, now you're saying, let's go after a young quarterback who hasn't seen a lot. For years, this matchup was about, could Tennessee keep, Florida from going on one of those basketball-type runs where they score on 5 straight possessions or whatever. This feels more like it's heading towards a potential low-scoring, kind of defensive-type game.
Yeah, I'm going the other way.
You think it's going to be high-scoring?
I don't know if it's going to be high-scoring, but I think I looking at it, I would think I would I would take the over. I would.
What's the over setting at? Sorry,
I think it's at like 48.
Whew.
And I'm just because
so you got like a 28-17,
31-20, something like that. I just think that there's going to be enough. I think because the flip side, everything you just said was sound, salient, and I think right on. The flip side of that to me is that both of these teams, the best parts of their teams outside of Florida's pass rush. Outside of Florida, the best part of these teams is their skill players. Tennessee, the best part of these wide receivers. Florida, they have all their complement of athletes on the perimeter. I think Florida's going to go 5 wide and do some funky stuff, and Tennessee's secondary is going to be challenged in that respect. And I do think that Tennessee's going to have some success running the ball, and I think they're going to break a play or two. Now the question is, can they get the requisite amount of stops? Now it could be a rock fight. People thought, BYU was going to be a rock fight, and then it ended up, both sides ended up being able to garner a little bit of offense late. But I'm going. I think the offense is going to be surprising
because of explosive plays.
Yes, because
not necessarily somebody grinding it,
not
driving
grinding drives. I think it's going to be some missed tackles and some busts because we're talking about 2 secondaries that have Tennessee, whether they bring back Brice, and then Florida dealing with the uncertainty of Henderson. Marco struggled. Dean and Jaden Hill and these guys are young. There's a lot of question marks from big playmakers going up against some inexperienced.
See, I think
DBs.
the BYU game still was a rock fight. 16-16 down regulation. Once you get to
16-13.
once you get to overtime, I don't even count anything after that.
So you think this is a low scoring deal, or do you think it is?
Tennessee should have scored 35 points against BYU.
Yeah, but they didn't, and they're not good on offense. They can't convert. They can't convert 4th downs. They can't
go to the
drives
03 Alabama game. What was the game going to overtime, and then it ends up 51 to whatever.
Well, this is gambling 101, Austin, but that's why the over-unders are baked into overtime.
I'm not worried about the betting line, okay? I'm not worried about the gambling.
I don't think anybody gets 30.
You don't think anybody gets 30 in this game?
I agree.
Okay.
I think it's close, though. I think they get in the high 20s.
Okay, so you think there's going to be a decent amount of points scored? You're
Yeah.
thinking 28, whatever, 28-20, something like that.
Yeah.
But you're thinking more of the
28-24.
what was that 2014 Treon Harris
I'm
10-6
I'm
game?
just wondering if neither offense can muster anything up because you're going to have a defensive coordinator in Jeremy Pruitt who's going to try to get exotic and confuse a quarterback, and then on the flip side you've got Todd Grantham, who I know he's played some zone to try to help his secondary, which has struggled a little bit. They play a little bit more zone against Kentucky. I think he's coming after Tennessee.
He is.
I think he is.
But third and Grantham.
He is opening up the bucket and coming after Tennessee with everything from every different direction to confuse an offensive line and to confuse a quarterback who has had a hard time seeing the field through 3 games.
What's Jared done to scare you if you're a defensive coordinator? I mean, I might dial it back if he beats me on just scalds me on a couple of hot routes in the first quarter, but he has not proven that that's something he's going to do.
He was 10-9 2014. I said 10-6.
Yeah.
That was a terrible game to watch.
Well, that was another. I mean, that should
It was
have
a
been
terrible game to cover.
I was here. That's what I'm saying.
That should have been the start of Butch Jones's 4 straight wins over the Florida Gators, but we won't go back down that historical path. But that's all they had to do was punt, and make Florida drive the length of the field, and they give up a sack fumble because they wanted to take a home run shot with a lead for whatever reason in that game. All right, so back to this game, the one that counts for Tennessee this week. Tennessee, to get an upset, 2 things they have to do. 2 things. Win the turnover battle.
Win the turnover battle and hit some big plays on offense. I mean, like multiple, like three like 40-plus yard plays.
All right, we're all going to go win the turnover battle, so give me something else.
I think they've either got to score on a trick play or score on a turnover.
Like scoop and score type
Yeah,
deal.
pick 6, scoop and score.
Yeah, I would count that as one of the 40-plus yard chunk plays. I mean, they've got to do something crazy.
I think the only way Tennessee wins this game is if Garantano has an Auburn 2.0 performance.
Well,
I think that's the only way they win this game.
Auburn 2.0, more importantly to that, and of course I think you can't do one without the other, but play like you played a year ago, whereas Jesse has talked about ad nauseum. This guy was known as the guy who didn't take the risk, who was almost more of a manager than he was throwing into traffic and that kind of thing. Play more that way.
I think there's times he just tries to do too much, but just like you're saying, just catch it and throw it. Yeah, I mean, run what's
do what the play's called.
Right, do what's designed for you to do. Just, I mean, don't overthink it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, sometimes you can get in there and you can talk yourself into something that's not there. Just catch it and throw it sometimes.
We ain't playing flag football. We're drawing up new plays in the huddle here.
Yeah,
Let's call what's designed.
I think, I'm with you.
It's not varsity blues.
No, oop to you. I'm with you. I mean, obviously the turnover battle is a given. I think you do have to score cheap points, and Garantano has to play just lights out. He has to be lights out in this game to have a chance, for Tennessee to have a chance to pull off the upset. Can Tennessee do it? We'll see. We'll obviously have full coverage of it from Gainesville throughout the weekend, and obviously Tennessee goes into an open date next week, but we'll cover everything about Florida.
Well, just a last thought here. Because of Tennessee's kind of struggles in Gainesville, what do you do with the coin toss if you're Jeremy Pruitt?
Kick it. I'm kicking it.
I agree.
Because you can't have something bad happen to you.
If you
You
go
just can't-
3 and
I mean-
out, or you turn it over and give them a short field right out the gate and they score.
Look what happened to you last year. You got the ball at home last year to start the game. What happened to you?
I get it. I'm just thinking if the thing is that Florida's going to be a sleepy crowd starting early, what happens if their fans are rolling into the stadium at 12-10 and Tennessee's up 7-0?
I mean, I do think I think Tennessee's got to get out of the first quarter either tied or with the lead.
I'm kicking the ball. I'm kicking the ball and taking my chances on my defense getting a stop there, because there's a couple things that's happened in this series through the years. Tennessee's been in some games. This is back when Spurrier was coaching.
Right.
Been in some games. Had to punt the ball late. Took the ball to start the game. They have to punt late in the second quarter. Here, Tennessee
And
is giving,
touchdown, then touchdown coming
right.
out.
They give up one right at the end of the
Oh,
half.
I get it,
and
for
boom, and it started the second half, ball game over type deal. And so I'm kicking. That's what I'm doing.
Do you ever not kick?
Oh, there's certain games I wouldn't kick. Yeah, but I would kick. In this one, I would kick it. We'll see what Tennessee elects to do in this one. I mean, if you think you've got something on them that they haven't seen,
What would you do, Jim?
and you can.
Well, see, part of it, you guys were talking about trick plays, that kind of stuff. I'm wondering if they accept, and this is where you roll out a flea flicker, one of the first 2 plays of the game.
I mean, there's merit to that. I just go back to
I know.
You fumbled it on your second play from scrimmage to open the season,
Right.
On a scripted 12-play drive
For sure.
to start the game.
The devil's advocate, I get that 100%.
But I see what you're saying. If you can jump on them,
With the fans showing
does it
up
get
late,
you going?
yeah.
There's a lot of trick plays that you could run. Flea flicker with inexperienced tackles and good edge rushers. Probably not one of them.
That's
for
probably
me.
the safest. That's way more safe than a wide receiver throwing a pass or something like that. That's just all that is a standard max protect play.
Okay.
If you don't think they can run a flea flicker, I don't know how you're going to pick them to just win.
Dude.
Well, this debate will obviously continue, but that's going to do it for this edition of the Volquest.com podcast.
He called 16-16 not a rock fight.
For Jesse Simonton, Austin Price, and Rob Lewis, I'm Brett Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend, everybody.